I've had a couple of days now to mull over some of the conversations, discussions, emails, messages, comments, etc. regarding the video that I posted of my sister-in-law beginning to train with each other in ground grappling or Jiu Jitsu or wrestling or whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to give it, and the subsequent response video that Sifu Freddy posted, and all of that. And after reflecting on it and thinking about it, reflecting on my experience of last weekend, and just mulling over everything, my conclusion is that the wrong questions are being asked. The question, not that there's a wrong question or anything, but there's a question that's being overlooked, I should say. There's something that hasn't even been talked about yet that I'd like to bring up, that I'd like to enter into the conversation. So far, we've heard questions like, does FMK support this? Or would Freddie consider me to be gay if I did the same things with a male training partner as I did with my sister-in-law? Or just simply, why is Ryan training in these techniques? These kind of questions have been raised, but I want to bring up another question. And as I was reflecting on my experience and stuff, one of the things that really kind of shook me last weekend was that in the context of beginning this training with my sister-in-law, my body had a memory that came back to me in a kind of a flashback of my brother and I doing essentially the same thing, just naturally, as part of our childhood sparring and playing together. We would naturally try to get into the mount position on one another, so that ultimately, if we got in the mount, we could torture the other guy, right? You could do something to him and he can't get away because you're sitting on his chest and you got his arms pinned down and he's fucked. And so this was part of our natural play fighting when we grew up as boys. And all of this kind of came flooding back to me as I was wrestling around with my sister-in-law, because first of all, why I asked my sister-in-law to participate in this training with me is because I am reluctant to train with men. Not that I have any fear of training with a male partner, but like Freddie, I had this thing in me that says this activity is too intimate physically to be done with a man. If you're a heterosexual guy, this is not a comfortable range. And so I can identify with that. I mean, in fact, growing up, I was doing martial arts from the age of 12 to 18, and doing some pretty good contact, hardcore stuff. And my high school had a decent wrestling program and a team and all of that. And really, if I wanted to improve my skills in the martial arts, I would have been smart to get involved with the wrestling team. But I avoided it. I avoided it for two reasons. One, I'm not the kind of guy that gets into competitive sports. So it's for that same reason that at least part of it, that I don't really have an appreciation for the UFC or any of the competitive fighting. I share that disdain with Freddie, with Sifu Freddy, because of the competitive aspect of it, because it is a sport, and then the violent nature of it is just pretty over the top. On the other hand, I can appreciate that through those sport competition fighting, like the K1 and the UFC and other organizations, the martial arts in the last decade or so has evolved tremendously. It's changed the game, completely from what it was when I was growing up. When I was growing up, what I was into was, it was all like Jeet Kune Do based stuff. It wasn't Jeet Kune Do, but it was a mix of striking arts, and everybody was very inspired by what Bruce had done, and so building off of that. But it was nowhere near the kind of like scientific art of what works and what does not work in certain situations that we have today, as a result of the testing ground that has occurred in the cage. Now, I do appreciate, of course, that testing ground has some fatal flaws. Like for instance, some of the practices that my sister-in-law were doing, although we were just very novice and very slow and very inept at this point, of course. But there are times when we got our heads basically down on the lower chest of our training partner, hugging on there, and while the person might not have much strength to punch effectively at somebody whose head is on their chest, there are sure a lot of other vulnerable aspects of the head and face that anybody who is trained to take advantage of those could get at. You could rip nostrils, earlobes, the sides of the mouth, the eyes, pulling hair. It's all kinds of ridiculous, very painful and debilitating stuff you can do to the sensory organs around the face and the head without striking. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that, that what we're being told in some ways regarding the efficacy of grappling is inaccurate, because of some of the positions which allow for extreme vulnerability if it was to be a real fight situation. So, in my own training, I plan to keep that stuff in mind, so that, of course right now I'm moving slow, but I can see where you want to be moving much faster. You want to be much more protective of vital areas than the training demonstrates just classically in training for sports Jiu Jitsu or something like that. Anyway, I've kind of gone off course. What I was saying was that I can certainly relate to the reluctance to do that kind of training with men on the basis of that it's just too intimate and heterosexual men don't do that kind of thing. Now, when you say that, though, what you got to realize is that that has been something that has been culturally trained into us to be really homophobic and to be shy of intimacies of the body. And it's inaccurate to say that people are going to have some kind of sexual arousal from being engaged in those intimate positions in grappling, because I thought it might be the case. I mean, for me, certainly, I had the same reluctance. But even after just one session of grappling with my sister-in-law, I realized there's no arousal that's going on in there. It's just silly. What you're doing is having fun, wrestling, grappling, just like you did when you were a kid. And that now, far from being the inept kid that's just going off of instinct, we even have a science where we can learn how to do it like really, really proficiently, and to use our bodies and leverage and stuff in ways to overcome opponents who are much larger than us and this kind of a thing. It's a great thing for women to learn. Why isn't it a great thing for men to learn? Yeah, it's a great thing for women to learn because women are often in that victim position, but men can be there too. Certainly there's more that can happen in that kind of position on the ground than rape. I have personally witnessed fights where a guy has sat on another person and punched him in the face. Certainly I don't want to be in a position where I don't know what I'm doing down there. If somebody was to get me on the ground, that I'm just getting clobbered, that I'm getting my arms broken, my legs broken, my ankles broken, that I'm getting choked out just because I don't know this stuff, and just because I'm so shy of the intimate positions that I don't want to learn how to use my body. When really, I started off as a child using my body to its full potential like that. That was just one of the ranges of physical practice that naturally children engage in. Certainly I did. So this brings about the question that I think we're missing here. And the question, I think, and I recall seeing this on a parkour site one time on the web, where there was an image of some child playing on monkey bars, and the caption for the meme said, "The question is not when did you start training parkour, the question is when did you stop?" And I think that this applies very well to what it is that I'm doing right now, the shift that I'm making in my training. Not that I'm shifting my training away from the striking arts and other things, but that I want to include that range. I want to include that range because I think it's natural, and my body is telling me that it is, and my muscle memory is telling me that it is. It's all very familiar, and like I said, it brings flashbacks to a childhood of wrestling with my brother, naturally, where there's no sexual anything of any kind. That's something that that's been ingrained with us for some other reason. I mean, it's the same thing, like, that keeps people from, people from developing their parkour from childhood through adulthood, that they stop to be adults, to be mature. You stop playing. And I think the ground grappling is a natural play that we need to get back to. And so the question is not why is Ryan starting to practice Jiu Jitsu? The question is, when did Ryan stop? And I can tell you, Ryan stopped a long time ago. Ryan stopped sometime in the early teens. And so that's a while ago. And now to go back to it, I realize now how foolish that was to stop. And the whole thing fits very well, I think, into my artistic vision of what I'm doing in the martial arts. And what I'm doing, and I've said it again and again, the way that I look at martial arts is, yeah, it's about preparation for fighting, yeah, but it's more than that. And it can be, and the biggest fights, the real fights that you're going to face are metaphorical, in terms of they're not really fighting another person, but you got to fight things like old age. You got to fight things like immobility, inflexibility. You got to fight things like decreased strength. You got to fight things like decreased stamina. There's all the skills that we can develop that are important. And this includes the flexibility, this includes the cardio, this includes the strength, this includes the fighting at every range. And we need to remember that it should be a joy what we're doing, that it's not for the competition, not for some ego-based thing, some kind of prestige, some kind of this or that, but just for the joy of expressing ourselves with our bodies and getting exercise and being healthy and developing abilities and skills in physical ways and mental ways and all of this. We need to remember that. So, like when I hear Sifu Freddy say, I don't need the ground grappling, because in reality, I pull out a pistol, I pull out a firearm, and it's done. That's true. If your fight is just that physical fight against another person. But that's not my fight. My fight is about all of these things that creep up on us through the natural aging process, when we are immobile and when we are not practicing to use our bodies in all of these different ways that we did naturally when we were children, and then we stopped because society told us to stop doing that. And then decades pass and we're like, man, I wish I could do what I used to be able to do. Well, shit, if we just kept going, we could have done all that stuff and more at this point. So to me, the whole firearm thing, I'll give an analogy. I don't need to run. I don't need to run and practice cardio and all that stuff, because I own a Jeep. And I can just put the key in the Jeep and I can drive where I want to go. That's the analogy. To me, that's the same thing as what's being said with the gun. That I don't need to practice certain ranges of fighting physically because I can rely on the gun. I think in a way, You know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. I just think the art, that's where the art is dropped off and things just become the martial. And I've been in this scenario with the things that are just the martial. I've been in the military, and I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in the guns, the firearms, the killing. I'm not interested in just the martial. I'm interested in the art, and I'm interested in the natural art, the natural martial art of a human being. Beyond all these labels, beyond all of this stuff, what is our natural development supposed to be as a human being? That's where I want to go with my art. I want to go to where I'm supposed to be as a human being. If we didn't have this culture that fucked us over in our youth and told us to do something else other than being a human being, what would I be today? That's the direction that I want to go in. So again, you know, the question is not, why am I starting to do this, and is it gay, or is this blah blah blah? That's silly stuff. The real question is, you know, when do we stop doing this play? And there is an aspect of the play. There is an aspect of the physical fighting and practice, the sparring and stuff, that is intimate. That as human beings, I think we long for, and that's why I was trying to express the other day with the video of the dog. I was playing with the dog, and the dog naturally will spar with me. If I just lead it on just a little bit, the dog will spar play with me. But a big aspect of the spar play is that the dog wants the physical contact. It longs for the physical contact with another being, and that is part of the play. It's not sexual contact need, it's just physical contact with others, with other beings, and that's part of our needs that I think are not met in the culture that we're in. And so, you know, maybe some of that is being taken out. Maybe some of that repression of having that need met is being taken out in the ultra-violent manner of the sports that are entertaining us. Maybe there, because we're not supposed to enjoy the physical touch, the non-sexual physical touch of natural sparring, maybe because we're not supposed to enjoy that, then we turn it into a fight so that we can excuse it, like a real fight where people are getting hurt. And I don't think it has to go there. I think the whole, like all the leaps and bounds in the science of the martial arts would be even greater if we took away the violence, took away the strong violence. You know, kept in mind that that's what the practice is about, is dealing against that strong violence. Develop the techniques so that with that in mind, and the methods and the science with that in mind, but we don't have to actually do that to each other. And in fact, like I was saying, in the sport, there are limitations to what's allowed, and as a result, people are learning skills that wouldn't work in a fight with somebody who is willing to, you know, take your nostril and rip it out. So that's kind of what's come to me after a couple of days of considering this whole thing. I'm going to continue on with all of my various training, with FMK, with what I'm doing with my friends, and trying to like renew a Blackfoot martial arts, or re-envision it, explore that with the grappling that I'm doing with my sister-in-law, and it may eventually involve others with my training in strength training, my flexibility training, and my endurance training, my running, my hiking, my swimming. I'm going to keep doing it all. And I'm going to keep pushing myself in the parkour stuff. I'm going to keep pushing myself toward what I sense is the physical nature of what we're supposed to do as human beings, where we're supposed to be the kind of physical practice that we are born with the natural inclination to do. And I'm not going to cut some aspects of that training out just because our culture, just because one segment of our culture is telling us we shouldn't do that kind of stuff because that kind of stuff is kind of gay. And when it's not. So anyway, that's my perspective for now, and I'm just gonna get on with it.